सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्म विद्या संप्रदाय कर्तृभ्यो वंश ऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितः प्रज्ञानघनः प्रत्यगर्थो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। ओम शांति शांति शांति। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शंकरं लोकशंकरं शंकरं शंकराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेद विभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ओम। Mantra number 7. Yas sarvagna sarvavit yas sarvagna sarvavit yasyesha mahima bhuvi yasyesha mahima bhuvi divye brahmapure hyesha divye brahmapure hyesha व्योम्न्यात्मा प्रतिष्ठितः व्योम्न्यात्मा प्रतिष्ठितः मनोमयः प्राणशरीरनेता मनोमयः प्राणशरीरनेता प्रतिष्ठितोऽन्यहृदयं सन्निधाय प्रतिष्ठितोऽन्यहृदयं सन्निधाय तद्विज्ञाने परिपश्यन्ति धीराः तद्विज्ञानेन परिपश्यन्ति धीराः आनन्दरूपममृतं यद्विभाति आनन्दरूपममृतं यद्विभाति। Yesterday we saw यह सर्वज्ञ सर्ववित् यस्य एष महिमा भुवि. His glory is in this earth or in this world. That means that Ishvara, who is Sarvagna and Sarvashaktiman. This Mahima indicates Sarvashaktimatvam, that he has all Shakti with him, because everything is in Maryada. Nothing can cross the boundaries. Oceans remain in their Maryada, rivers remain in the Maryada, even the animals remain in their boundaries. the galaxies, the stars, etc., sun, etc., they are all in Maryada. That is its Mahima. That is his glory. And he says, now the question comes, where is it? We have discussed this thing in detail. Sarvagna, Sarvavit, Yasya Esha Mahima Bhumi. The question is, where is this Ishvara? Where is this Brahman? The Shruti says, Divye Brahmapure Hyesha Vyomni Atmar Pratishtitaha. That is very interesting. Where is this Ishvara? See this. One who is Sarvagna Sarvavit, one whose Mahima or the glory is being talked over here. The question comes, where is he, that Ishvara? Is he in a Vaikuntha? Is he in Kailasa? Is he in Goloka, Saket Loka, etc.? Where is he? Look at, where is he? That Mahima, he is a Niyanta, Niyati, the controller, controller general. That is what he is. And this is, he is self-evident self, who abides in the place of buddhi, which is conscious. Shruti doesn't say he is in Vaikuntha or Golok or Saket Lok. Ishvara, with his Visishta Upadhi, is talked in our Shastra as Vaikuntha Vasi, Kshisagar Nivasi, staying in the ocean of milk, sitting on a serpent, and staying in Kailasa. He lives in Kailasa, etc. All are there. But here, where is he? Shruti says it is here. That means the second half of this line indicates Jiva Ishvara Aikya, the non-duality between Ishvara and individual. How does he say? He says, is he away from me? He says, no. Divye Brahmapure Tishtati. Okay? Brahmapuri. Puri means Nagari or abode. So the place where Brahma exists is called Brahmapuri. Where the Brahma lives. The same Brahman is Sarvagna Sarvavit. With its Maya Upadhi, Brahma manifests itself as Ishvara. Sarvagna Sarvavit Sarvashaktiman. And that Ishvara, the same Brahma, in this body-mind complex, he resides where? He says Brahmapure, means in the Brahma Nagari. What is this? Brahmapure. So, Brahma exists in buddhi as consciousness. Okay? Brahma exists in buddhi as consciousness. In how? As awareness. It is there as awareness in every thought. The vritti. All the vrittis are nothing but consciousness plus nama rupa. Consciousness plus nama rupa. Exactly like in a movie, all the hero, heroine, and the villain and the villain's friends and hero's friends and the parents and everybody, all living in, sentient and inert objects are nothing but what? Light plus name and form. Only name and form changes. Light is a very substratum of all those fellows that are there on a screen in a movie. So also on the screen of the mind, all that vrittis are there. Vishakara, Bhavakara, Gnanakara, whatever it may be. In the form of knowledge, in the form of emotions, in the form of objects, whatever it may be. All these vrittis, all the cognitions and the absence of cognitions, all emotions and absence of emotions, all objects and absence of all objects, like in my dream, in my sleep or in a dream, gross objects are absent. In the dream, there are projected objects, projected world, and their absence in the sleep, they are nothing but awareness. There is that the so-called space of awareness in which they all rise and die, like the wave in the ocean. All the waves rise and die, rise and die. Similarly, Akash, in the space of awareness obtaining in buddhi, in the thoughts that is there, that which you call it as sakshi. The sakshi, one who witnesses of all the vrittis and absence of all the vrittis, that is the space. Okay, so vyomni akashe, it is in the space of consciousness obtaining in buddhi. And the word vyoman is vyomna, is a figurative usage. It is called, because anything you want to give a location, you have to give in space. So it is just as Brahma Puri is figurative. There is no, remember, that is not Brahma Loka. The word is not Brahma Loka. If it was Brahma Loka, then you have to go up. Bhuhu, Bhuaha, Suaha, Maha, Janaha, Tapa, and Satyam Loka. And to go there, you need to do all kinds of upasanas and all kinds of rituals, which a common man just cannot do it. That Brahma Loka, but he says Brahma Puri, Puri Nagari is a figurative. And Vyoman, the space, the Akash is also figurative. Therefore, there is another word used in Shastra. You might have heard this. If you listen to traditional Mahatmas, I rarely use it, because Puja Swamiji very rarely used it. It's little confusing if you don't understand it properly. Chidakasha, Chidakasha. What is Chidakasha? The Chit obtaining in the Akasha of Buddhi, as though Akasha. Obtaining in the as though Akasha, like the space, it accommodates everything. In the buddhi, or you can say antakaranam, all the thoughts are accommodated. They rise and they subside in buddhi. And in buddhi thoughts and all, they rise in consciousness. Consciousness is the substratum for all the thoughts to arise. Consciousness is the basis for all thoughts to arise and to subside. That is called Chidakasha. And just by the way, Puja Swamiji used to say this, when you say Chidambaram, Chidambaram means what? The same Chidakasha. It can take it individually. You can take Chidambaram, Nataraja totally. In the space of buddhi, that Nataraja dances. Like Nataka Diva Prakarana in Panchadashi, if you have studied. Different vrittis coming in the mind and subsiding, coming and going. That is a dance of Nataraja. That is a dance of Chidakasha. It dances. Chaitanya as though dances in the form of different vrittis. Like your heart chart, and then put you on certain instruments. When you have a heart attack, the monitor movements of the pulses and heart, and you see on the chart lines coming and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Like that, that is a dance of Nataraja. Okay? That is called Chidakasha. Or space is Ambaram. That is called Chidambaram. Or the whole universe is also dance of Chidambaram. All the objects that arise in the universe, they are born and they die and they sustain. Even while sustenance, there is a lot of vikara. All that is a dance of what? Nataraja. Nataraja symbolizes Brahman. Sat Swarupa Rup Brahma. Sat Swarupa Brahman. Nataraja Rupena Nrutyati Asmin Jagati. It dances in this world as Nataraja. How? Sadrupa. Everything arises in Sat, everything dissolves in Sat, and everything sustains in Sat. What arises and what dissolves? What sustains? These are Nama. Birth of Nama Rupa takes place, then birth Nama Rupa sustains, Nama Rupa dissolves. Like in a movie, the different characters arise in the movie theater, on a screen. They are sustained and they dissolve. Can be said to be the dance of light. In the light, the dance of light is symbolized since it's a dance, Ishvara is symbolized as Nataraja. Okay? So Nataraja is dance, joy. Lila matre. Why even you can't say joy? Lila, lilaya, nrityati. Out of lila. Then there is no synonym for lila. In Gujarati, there is synonym green. Lilo color. Green color is lila. It's a dance of Nataraja, the whole creation. Which Nataraja? Satsvarup Nataraja. And in Buddhi also it is his dance. Which Nataraja? Chidrupa Nataraja. Chidakasha Rupa Nataraja. So they say, Chidambaram Rahasya. Ambaram in the space. Chidambaram Rahasya. That is there is nothing there. The space is worshipped as Ishvara. If you go to the Chidambaram temple, but then you can look at it from this perspective also. So far we said when they do Aarti of Chidambaram, there is only garland, golden garland, of Bilva golden garlands, gold in the shape of Bilva. Whole garland, Bilva golden garland is hanging there. And since it's a gold and you do Aarti, the light of the fire falls on it, it shines. So you see only that. And you don't see Vigraha. No Vigraha you can see. And so you may wonder, where is Bhagavan? And then they say, this is Chidambaram Rahasya. There is nothing Rahasyam. The Chidrupena, Ishvara, Yasya Esha Mahima Bhuvi, we saw in the previous month. This is his glory. What is Ishvara's glory? The Panch Mahabhuta itself is glory. From that Panch Mahabhuta, whole world is created. Since Panch Mahabhuta is a glory, Akash is glory, Vayu is glory, Agni is glory, Apa is glory, Prithvi is also glory. And it is all his manifestation. Tasmad va tasmad atmanah akasha sambhuta. Akashat Vayu. Vayo Agni. Agne Rapa. Adbh Prithvi. Prithvyam Oshadaya. Every plant is his glory. So when Akasha is his glory, so Akasha is worshipped in Chidambaram. Now you can see it this way also, that consciousness devoid of all thoughts is Chidambaram, Chidakash. That the Sakshi of all vrittis, all cognitions, and Sakshi of absence of cognition as well. One who knows all the vrittis and one who doesn't, who knows their absence also. It illumines the absence of the vrittis also. That is called Chidambaram. And that Chidambaram is dancing. Okay? All the thoughts are as though rise in awareness, sustain in awareness, and they dissolve back in awareness. That itself is the dance of Chidambaram. Chidambaram. Chidabhasa. Chidabhasa nrityati. It is dancing. Now, please understand this. All of you, I want you to pay attention to this fact. Okay? And as a Vedanta student, you should be very clear on this issue, whether you can own it up or not because of Nididhyasana Bhava and necessary. That's okay. Sabkan, that's another issue. But Mananam, clarity should be there. What is this? Now, when you say consciousness is all pervasive, and that which is all pervasive has to be formless. And that which is formless, how can you have location for it? Here the Shruti says, Pratyatishtati. It abides in the space of Buddhi, Buddhi, in the space of Buddhi, in the Buddhi. Brahmapuri, and that is called Brahmapuri. How can it have a location? Understand this. This is what the fallacy lies in the other theologies. Some theologies say God is formless, and at the same time, formless God is living in heaven or Jannat. If it is formless, how can it have location? Formless things should be limitless, all pervasive. And when it is all pervasive, how can you say it is here? It has to be everywhere. But still here Shruti says, Pratitishthati, that you have to see that Vyomni Atma Pratitishthati. How it is everywhere, but you recognize it at a particular place. And therefore, in a secondary sense, in a figurative sense, it is said that it stays here. You recognize Brahman in Buddhi. Therefore, Buddhi is said to be the abode of Brahman. You say, how do I recognize it, Buddhi? There is another question. Buddhi is a place, as if a place where all knowledge takes place. Okay? Any given knowledge takes place there. Everything else is recognized in Buddhi. So also Brahman is recognized in Buddhi. Even though it is all pervasive, the Jada Buddhi cannot recognize it everywhere. To recognize it being that it is everywhere, you have to recognize in Buddhi. That recognition takes place in Buddhi. Therefore, it is said, iti buddhau pratitishthati. In other words, Buddhi is upadhi sthanam. Okay? It is a sthanam. But upadhitaya is a figurative. Why upadhitaya? Because tatraiva gnayate. Just as all Vishaya Gnanam takes place here, Atma Gnanam also takes place in Buddhi. Therefore, it is said it resides in a Buddhi Guha. Okay? There cannot be a location for all pervasive Brahman, but even if it is all pervasive, my Buddhi being sthula, I cannot recognize it anywhere except here in the Buddhi. So, Buddhisthanam is given not to indicate the place where it is, because in fact, the very place is in Brahman. Brahman cannot be in a place. Place itself is in Brahman. Because Atmana Akasha Sambhuta. Akasha is born out of Brahman. So it is not that you recognize the Brahman, Brahman stays at a given place. It is beyond that place and time. Very time is within Brahman. But that this is the nature of Brahman is recognized in Buddhi. Therefore you say Buddhau Paritishthati. There are so many vakyas in Shruti that Brahman is there in Buddhi. Brahman shines in Buddhi. Brahman is gained in Buddhi. Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman Nihitam Guhayam. The Brahman is placed in the cave of Buddhi. The status of being cave is also figurative, because the cave is encompassed by darkness, and darkness symbolizes ignorance. So also Buddhi is encompassed by ignorance, and therefore it is not able to recognize. And you recognize there, therefore it is said, Buddhau Brahmapure Tishtati, Pratitishthati, Atma Pratitishthati, Buddhau Brahmapure. Now, there is one more adjective to Brahmapuri. Divye Brahmapure. This is a Sanskrit language. The adjective takes the vibhakti and the gender of the noun which it qualifies. You know. So Mahat Chaitanyam. So Chaitanyam being neuter, it becomes Mahat, means big or great, is become Mahat Chaitanyam. But if it is Trilinga, you say Mahati Chaitanya. You say Mahati Chaitanya. So here say Divye Brahmapure. Now Divi is a word. Divya is a locative. Brahmapure is a locative. So in that Divya Brahmapure, this is where again people who have not studied Shastra from Shrotriya Acharya and people who have not understood the Shastra properly, they use certain words in which confuse the people. And it is, the whole Shastra is confused and it is made mystical. A teaching cannot be mystical. Mysticism cannot be taught. And since it cannot be taught, when you make it mystical, then it becomes experiential. Mysticism is experiential. And when you use such words by which you make it mystical, that means Brahma Gnanam becomes experiential thing. And then when Anubhav Karna hai, whole north of India is talking that hame Brahma ka Anubhav Karna hai. Brahma, we have to experience Brahman. Brahma ko sakshatkar karna hai, they say this. These are the words which you need to understand properly. Divye. The word is Divi. Divya means heaven. Heavenly Brahmapuri, which is not the case. When you interpret Brahmapuri as a place where Brahman is recognized, namely Buddhi, why do you say Buddhi? Because there is a word Atma Pratishtita. Brahmapuri, in Brahmapuri, the self is abiding. What self? That which is Jagat Karanam, Yesha Mahima Bhuvi. That who is Sarvagna, Sarvavit, who is Sarvashaktiman, is Atma Rupena Brahmapurau Tishtati. As a self, it abides in Brahmapuri. That means Buddhi. And when you say in the heavenly Buddhi, heaven Buddhi, no, that doesn't work here. And therefore they translate it was, Divya Shabda, divine consciousness. This word divine is most unholy word, I would say. They think by saying divine, they are giving divinity to Brahman. But I would say the divine adjective to Brahman is a most unholy word to be used for it. When you say divine, then it becomes experiential. You have to call, you can't describe, you can't explain, or I would say you cannot you can never ever communicate what is divine. Think of it. Can you do that? You cannot say. And then when they cannot communicate, they make it more mystical by changing the tone. The divine consciousness. I don't know. Say simply divine consciousness, and then or you say divine consciousness. What does it mean? It doesn't enlighten you in any which way. Divine is a wrong meaning given to Divya. Okay? And that's again, Shastra is, Shrotri Acharya is necessary and little buddhi sat drashyate sukshmaya. Even if one has a good teacher, but you ought to have some subtle buddhi to grasp it properly. Otherwise, it confuses. So many students of Puja Swamiji are talking this. I wonder how come, where did they learn this? One of our Swami was telling that you should not have don't do Go Puja. Are, Swamiji loved so much the cows, He used to say, if I have a next birth, I would prefer to be cow in Gujarat. And don't do that Go Puja, don't do this. Are, this is their problem. Acharya is Shrotriya Brahmanishta. Shishya also has to be. What is Divya? Though it means, it doesn't mean heaven. Otherwise, Brahma should be obtained in heaven. You can gain Brahman in heaven. That means everybody has to go to heaven, and that becomes like God in heaven created the world. That's not the meaning here. You cannot give loke to God. Upasana artha sambhavati. That is adhyaropa, deliberate superimposition. But you don't say it's real. God living in Vaikuntha Loka or Saket Loka is not real nature. It is aupadhikam. Upasanarthe uktam rushina. It is given for upasana. So, what does it divya mean? It diva means shining, self-effulgent. Diva means light. Divye Brahmapure Loke. Divye Brahmapure Vyomni Atma Pradishtitaha. Brahmapuri in the space of consciousness, which is self-effulgent, which is self-shining, which is self-revealing. There Atma Pratishtitaha. There Atma abides, So, Brahman located is as though. Now I go one step ahead. Brahma is there in Buddhirupuri. Brahmapuri, in the city called Brahman, the obtaining consciousness, space, Siddhakash. But it is self-effulgent. It is not true to say it is located there. Location is as though. And when the consciousness, the location of consciousness in Buddhi is as though, so also the location of consciousness in Vaikuntha is also as though. Therefore, I told you it is called Upadhisthanam. Upadhitaha sthanam given. From the standpoint of view of Upadhi, when Brahman assumes the Upadhi of Vishnu or Krishna or Rama or Shiva or Hanuman, then there is a Loka. But Upadhi itself is as though. So Loka is also as though. So it is Aupadhikam sthanam. It is Aupadhikam swarupam. The status of Brahman becoming Vishnu is Aupadhikam. And the Vishnu staying in Kshirisagara is equally Aupadhikam. And yesterday I told you, which is Aupadhikam means which is born of Upadhi. Upadhi means that which is incidental, not intrinsic. So the location of Brahman is incidental when we give. Brahman is Vishnu, it is Aupadhik. Since he wields the Upadhi of Vishnu Swarupa, here that Brahman becomes Vishnu. That means Brahman is as though Vishnu, not intrinsic. And Brahman's status of Vishnu, status of being Vishnu is as though. Obviously, the Vishnu staying in Kshirisagara is also as though. It is not real. We don't deny Aupadhikam existence. Please understand. Veda Vada yesterday. There is a Veda, but that Veda is Aupadhikam. When we say Advaitam, it is, therefore I have been telling non-duality in spite of duality. Non-duality doesn't mean the absence of duality. Non-duality in spite of duality, that is Advaita. What do you mean by in spite of duality? I mean only that much, that upadita, the duality is only aupadika. Duality is caused by upadhi. In other words, duality is incidental. A crystal appearing red and another crystal appearing green is incidental. This crystal is incidentally placed on a red cloth, so it appears red. Another crystal is incidentally placed on a green cloth. For us, some would always do it deliberately. The religious fellows have identified so much with the green color that everything has to be green to show off that we belong to this religious tradition. Anyway, so for them it may be deliberately, but for us it is incidental. Placing the crystal on a green cloth is incidental, and placing the crystal on red cloth is also incidental. And the difference between the two of redness and greenness is incidental. So duality is incident, but it is there in Vyavaharikam. And therefore, it is there in Vyavaharikam, so it is incidental, and therefore non-duality continues to be what it is. It was non-dual, it is non-dual, and it will be non-dual. Even if there are many, there were many, there are many, there will be many, but that manyness is incidental, called aupadika. Means the redness of the crystal is incidental, not intrinsic. The status of being Ishvara, Sarvagna Sarvavid Yasyesha Mahima Bhuvi, is incidental, not intrinsical. And say that also becomes what Atma. Saesha Atma. That Brahman is this self. This is Mahavat. Yes, Sarvagna, Sarvavita, Yasyesha Mahima Bhuvi. And there he says, Esha Atma. Second half of the mantra. That is this Atma. Which Atma? Where is this Atma? That Ishvara is Atma. Jiva Ishvara Aikya. Ishvara is, Mahima is told. But where is this Jiva? Divye Brahmapure Pratitishtati. It abides in this Divya, means self-shining, self-effulgent Brahmapuri. So, the nature, it is of the nature of illumination. So, and in the form of consciousness. So, Divye Brahmapure Pratitishtati, it abides in the form of consciousness in Buddhi, and it abides as what? Different vrittis, different awareness. You can say it goes on anything. So that incidentally it is this, that is what Shruti says. Buddhi is consciousness, and as though it is there located in Buddhi. By the way, it is all pervasive. Very Buddhi is in consciousness. Okay, exactly like when if I see a dream and I see so many objects and I know so many objects, so my knowledge abides in my buddhi, but the very buddhi abides in the waker consciousness. It is within the consciousness. So all these abides in the consciousness, but since it obtains there, it is said that Yasyesha Mahiva Divi Vyomne Mahiva Bhuvi. It is a divine. Divine means self-effulgent, self-revealing. So Chidakashaha is self-effulgent. Chidakashaha is self-revealing. It reveals itself as it is, by itself. It doesn't require an agency of anything else. That is Divya Brahman, Drivya Brahmapur. Okay? Divya means not heavenly, much less divine. Whenever somebody says divine, you please understand to be self-effulgent. When you hear some Mahatma telling the divine experience of consciousness, that means self-effulgent consciousness. I am. It doesn't require any kind of illumination. Nothing. Without agency of buddhi also, you know I am. That is called self-revealing consciousness. That is called Divya Brahmapure. Okay? Yeah. Though we give the location of Brahman is talked about here, but the fact is everything is in Brahman, including space. So, Divya Brahmapure Yesha Atma Vyomni Atma Pratitishthati. That means what is obtaining in buddhi as I, is Jagatkar, is Sarvashaktiman, Sarvajna, whose Mahima, whose glory is there. And in the form of Jagat, in many ways, it is self-revealing itself. That is Atma. So this one mantra, one line of this mantra, it indicates what? Jiva Ishvara Aikyam. Means from the standpoint of the consciousness, they are one. They are non-separate from each other. That is called non-divisible from each other. Continuing further, he says, Manomayaha prana shariras neta pratisthito vanne hridayam sannidhaya tadvignanena paripashyanti dhiraha ananda amrutam Ananda Rupam Amrutam Yad Vibhati. Okay, let's go further. What it says, Manomayaha Atma. Manomaya means what? That self which is one with Ishvara has a manaha, as a upadhi. Mind is upadhi. Because of this mind, that Atma becomes what? Experiencer, perceiver. That Atma becomes what? Knower, thinker, feeler. You feel that emotions. All that becomes because of Antahkarana Upadhi. Okay? This is the Vyashti Atma. Vyashti Atma is Manomaya. Samashti Atma is Mayamaya. This statement should be understood properly. There are not two Atmas. When it wills the Upadhi of Maya, it becomes Sarvagna Sarvavit. And when it wills the Upadhi of this is Prana, Sharir, Indriya, etc., it becomes Alpagna Alpavit. We are talking about this Atma, who is obtaining in Buddhi. And that Atma is, what is it? He says, Bhuyomni Atma Tishtati Manomayaha. Manomaya means according to vrittis of the mind. Mind keeps changing. Vrittis keep changing. Whatever may be the vritti, that Atma identifies as though with buddhi. Atma is Sarvagna Sarvavit. The Sahi Atma Tatrastha Manovritti Veri Eva Vibhavyate Iti Manomaya. The same Atma is recognized by thoughts of the mind Manovritti, And therefore, it is called Manomaya. Okay? All modifications of the mind, all vikaras of the mind are centered on the consciousness. It gives them satta spurti, without which they cannot be. Therefore, it is called Manomaya, Prana Sharira Neta. Oh my God, what is happening to me? Anyway, Neta, he leads. What? Prana Sharira. Prana Sharira implies Sukshma Sharira. Sukshma Sharira Neta. Okay? So, Prana Sharira means Sukshma Sharira, where it leads from one body to another body. Okay? So, this, though we say subtle body leaves the gross body, that is death, and subtle body takes to another body, that is birth, but subtle body by itself doesn't go, itself doesn't come. The Jivatma takes the subtle body. Jivatma has to be there to take everything with him. And then, where does he go, by the way? It depends upon the karma and karma phalas. Asmin janmani, purvasmin janmani krutani bhav. The karmas might have been done in this life, in earlier life, or maybe in previous lives, maybe 1,000 lives ago or whatever. The law of karma has its own laws by which the result is shaped and delivered at a particular time in a particular situation, and that decides the trajectory of this Jivatma. So Jivatma taking Sukshma Sharira goes. Where does it go? By the way, GPS is already fixed. Yamraja fixes the GPS first. Take him to this loka and that loka and this loka, and ultimately he can come to my loka. It goes by GPS. And here in GPS, you have a freedom to change the route of your own choice. There you have no right, You may change the destination also. These are typical of Indians in America. They remember the roads very well. When they've gone, they just remember closer by areas. And this Mausi will go by, GPS will go by satellite programming. So it will say, turn right on the highway and take the exit 68. But this fellow knows the exit 68, 7 is shorter. And after 60, or he may know after 62, I should get out because the highway toll will be charged to me. So he will get out after 62, and from different lanes he will go. And that lady who is speaking this in GPS is always busy in telling, recalculating. Poor lady, her arithmetic seems to be very slow. By the time she calculates and tells you, now take the second exit, go to your right for 500 meters and then turn right. That fellow again will take the first exit. Again, mouse will be recalculating. Somebody said, it's American mouse, it's better than recalculating. It says, if it was a Gujarati GPS and programmed by some government officers or policemen, they would have said after second time, Dopa Ahmad to nathi. Default Mathukai said, oh, fool, why are you breaking my head? Don't you understand what I've been telling? And he would have said that in that way. પછી 5-10 વાર ના કહ્યું તો પેલો આપણો છે ને શબ્દ પેલો ડુફાકિયા કેમ નથી This is a typical Saurashtra word, Dupakya. Dumb-headed fool is called Dupakya. And anyway, coming back to this, the Jivatma travels, and that is taken by Jivatma. The subtle body is taken by Jivatma. Living a gross body and assuming a new gross body is only and only, please understand, from the standpoint of Upadhi. What upadhi? Avidya upadhi. The fellow, the same consciousness. Yas sarvagna sarvaviti yasyesha mahima bhuvi. The same consciousness, when it was talked that what is that? Bhumi divye brahmapure yesha vyomni atma pratishtita. That consciousness takes. How it can take? Understand? If consciousness is everywhere and all pervasive, how it can take one thing to some other place? You cannot have movement. For an all-pervasive vastu, it has to be formless. And therefore we explain that formless, that being formless, how do you say it is there in buddhi? It is upadhisthanam. There you recognize it to be there. That's all. It operates, manifests there as Shrota, Manta, Ganta, etc., etc. That is how you say. Exact to some extent like what we studied in Tattva Bodh. These ears, actually it is called ear lobes. We call it ears, but they are not ears. It is a place where which ear operate. The indriya, sense organ of listening is here. It resides here. It is upadhisthanam. Therefore, it is called ears. Understand? It is indriya. So also, that Brahman being all pervasive, that is upladhisthanatvat, it is said it is here. Now the question comes, that Brahman, how can it move? It cannot move because wherever it goes, it is there. Who moves? First question. All pervasive space moves or part of the space moves? If part of the space moves, then there is no movement. You have a lot of space to be moved here. When somebody says the part of the space is moving, this is called Amshavada, We are Amsha of Bhagavan. We are little consciousness and he is big consciousness. So little consciousness is moving. You have the littlest consciousness, the Maharaj or Guru who talks about this. Anyway, it is a upadhikam. Figurative. What upadhi? Agnana upadhi. It is because of ignorance. That means the jiva who is covered, who is pure consciousness, Satchidanand, but that is covered by ignorance. Avidya upaditaha pranasya sharirasya sthula sharir sukshma sharirasya atma neta bhavati. Le jane wala. But then sarupataha what? Sarvagna sarvavit yasyesha mahima bhuvi. He is sarvagna sarvavit. This is his glory. It has nothing to go and nothing to come. Okay. Vyomni atma pratishtataha prana sharirasya neta. And where does it stay? He says sthula sharire. Anne nidhaya. It abides in food. Food doesn't mean food. Anna vikaraha. In modification of food. What does it mean, anna vikaraha? Means sthula sharire. So that self-obtaining in sharira prana mana buddhi is me, is pure consciousness, is limitless consciousness. And as long as I am in this vyavahara, I have to accept people's opinion, views. That is called Brahmaloke Tishtati. Okay? And how do you know that Atma? Logically, you seem to be correct. But then how? That is what he says. Tadvik, he says, Hridayam pratisannidhaya tadvignanena paripashyanti dhiraha. Anne hridayam sannidhaya. Taking the heart, it moves. And how it is, we shall see that in the next class on 22nd Saturday. Very beautiful. Who can see? Very important mantra. Adhikaritvam is talked about here. And the phalam of knowledge also is talked about here. Hridayam Sannidhaya. It abides in the Hridaya as though Buddha. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. See you tomorrow.